This is Counteragent 357, conducting a self-audit at the behest of the Board of Shareholders for Arachne Applied Security Limited Liability, in order to assess the viability of the newest prototype agent, codename of Rat King. Audit begins. Question 1. Provide us with a brief abstract of the project. The Rat King project was created in response to the rather particular focus group testing that showed, while our more popular agents, such as the Ivory Crawler and the Lure Creep, were suitable for projects that required a high percentage of fatality, there was a considerable demand for agents with more clandestine applications, such as espionage and plausibly deniable assassinations of high-value single targets. Question 2. Provide a brief synopsis of the subject pre-conversion. As with all of my projects, the agent began as a volunteer named Richter Lavrosa. He had an extensive history of espionage working for the Central Intelligence Agency before abandoning the CIA in favor of working for intelligence gathering for bell tower bioweapons. Following the timely and violent dissolution of Bell Tower, he was offered a career with Arachne, as his skills were, despite working with the cretins at Bell Tower, quite a distinguishing marker in a sea of wastrels and morons. Question 3. Does the subject have any problems, social or psychological, that would make him difficult to control? He passed the psych evaluation with as close as comes to flying colors for our purposes, and Lavrosa lacks any interpersonal connections whatsoever that could be used to pressure him into desertion. He shows the same vigor for work that all of my subjects do, and submitted to all of the tests with what I can only call a childlike joy. Question 4. Describe the modification process that the subject underwent. We started with basic chemical treatments that most subjects undergo, a fairly standard regimen of doping and steroids to promote muscle growth, a stronger vascular system, and the like. We then shifted to our standard acrobat blend of treatments, flexibility training to allow the subject to fit into enclosed spaces, chemical enhancement of fast-twitch muscle fibers to allow for greater reaction times, speed, and acrobatics. We then began the process of implanting him with a series of 14 vat-grown brains attached through an arcane nervous interchange grafted onto his back and spinal cord. Each of the brains sits in an armored canister that could not be removed or even damaged without considerable force. Each brain operates with the efficacy and speed of a genius-level adult human at around a tenth of the size. Quite amazing what you can manage when you're building a brain rather than letting Mother Nature grow one, but I digress. These brains are wired in parallel to the Rat King's own and allow him to project empathetic force on par with the finest empathetic scions on the planet. This empathetic force is then used to dominate the mind of vermin, cockroaches, flies, ticks, and of course, rats. The agent is able to control them remotely with a range of up to 15 miles. He's able to see through their eyes, if they have them, feel what they touch, and even access senses that humans are not naturally privy to, such as the ability of ants to sense pheromone trails. Question 5. Describe the possible applications of the subject's modifications. Oh, well, what can't a swarm of well-controlled vermin be used for? Naturally, the insects could be used to spy on clandestine procedures, quite literally bugging people of interest, and stinging insects could be used to cause fatal reaction, either due to inherent sensitivities of targets or with the use of arachne-modified specimens. The rats can be used similarly, with the added bonus of being able to gnaw through wires, walls, slip under doors, as well as contaminate food. The psychological applications are also immense. Hire out the Rat King for a few days. Your neighbors suddenly get an infestation of rats that just don't look right, eventually driving them mad. They could also be used as a herald for another more lethal agent. Your house is filled with scratching behind the walls, and what's that? An ooze-type agent has phased through your wall and killed you days later. Then your decline is reported on in all the papers, and the entire community is sent into a state of shock and terror. Question 6. What are possible weaknesses of the subject? They need vermin, of course. Artificially introducing them is not that difficult, but we really must be careful not to introduce non-native vermin to keep deniability high. There's also an issue of the high caloric requirements. Despite making them run as lean as we can, those 15 brains need a massive amount of glucose to function. Recommendation for field operations is to have the Rat King hooked up to a chair with a constant team monitoring their glucose levels. Expensive, sure, but arachne rates are as high as they are because they work. There's also the issue of water. Unlike most cybernetic augments, cold could be the Rat King's undoing. Brains do not run well when they are too hot or too cold, and the amount of thermal cushioning we could do without increasing the bulk sizably was rather small. Submersion in cold water or chill winds could cause the auxiliary brains to shut down, severing the control the agent has over their swarms. Otherwise, as long as they aren't shot by an anti-material rifle, the extra brains are completely safe in their armor. Seeing as the agent does not need to move outside of an arachne-sanctioned safe house in order to function, the chances of this happening are slim to none. Setup times are a bit long, but that's primarily because I am somehow unable to find the budget for competent help. This concludes my self-audit, and I am quite excited to hear the ruling from the board on my newest project. As always, I am Counter Agent 357, lead scientist of Arachne Applied Security. Recording ends.